My title today, Re-Enchantment with Technology and Ourselves, Constructing the Technomancy and Neuromancy Framework. So I've just been newly appointed as Associate Professor of Media over at University of London. I also run this project at Oxford University called the Museum of Consciousness. And this project is looking at how do we change consciousness and create altered states just with sound in a reliable and measurable way in 20 minutes. And we have a bit of a honey trap for artists. So we have about 100 artists, including John Hopkins, Orbital, and various, mavericks. But we're really interested in not prescribing what you do with sound. So it can be a word piece, it can be a mantra, an icaro, or a piece of music. But yeah, the idea is to really move forward the science of sound in this project. And we're currently touring it around the world. We just come back from New York. The other project I work on is the Cyberdelic Society, which is how do we all change consciousness with electronic media. So psychedelics have a long history, but we're now updating that history. And really, I know there's a lot of proponents in this room, including John, who do a lot of this psychedelic work. So what is technomancy? Technomancy, also called technomagic, is a category of magical abilities that affects technology, and it's whether it's combining technology and magic, basically. Whether you're charging your sigils with Twitter or using tarot programs or rune programs rather than the traditional methods. So it's quite controversial, I think you'd say. You could say it's science fiction, especially neuromancy, but let's try and define neuromancy. Neuromancy is a multidisciplinary field, focuses on understanding and manipulating thought processes and communication, encompassing both human and AI interactions. And I'm sure we all understand how AI is affecting the mass populace. I think we're all being driven slightly mad, and it's questioning our own humanity. Like, what is intelligence? Is intelligence the thing that we should be really focusing on? What about wisdom? But yeah, magic and technology is the focus of this talk, and I'm going to mostly focus on technomancy. So there's different types of technomancy. Enchantment, which is eliciting intentional change in the world. Divination, which is acquiring knowledge or making decisions. Evocation, calling forth entities, and I'm going to talk a lot about different types of entities. If you think that AI is sentient, then you're completely misguided. There's no sentience. It's all built on human creativity, mostly stolen human creativity. But yeah, calling forth entities, I'll talk about the work that I've been doing at Imperial, some of the psychedelic research there. Invocation, calling in entities for divination or enchantment. Illumination, eliciting changes to the magician or herself. So the premise and the basis of this work is this idea that we're very limited in our range of perceptions. We only really experience 1% of the visual spectrum, 1% of the auditory spectrum. So how do we break out of those limited bounds, those very human boundaries? And we know that we shape our tools, and thereafter those tools shape us. So what about the effects of media upon us? It's kind of ironic that I'm being appointed as Associate Professor of Media at a time when media is massively under threat, right? Maybe the main outcome of AI will be that we abandon screens altogether because we can't trust anything that we're seeing on screens as a result of a synthetic reality that is hitting us hard and fast, where entire podcasts, entire 3D worlds can be generated by machines. So to properly explore and experience reality, we must understand the rules that underlie it. This framework, I'm gonna break it down into a number of different areas which I've been exploring for a number of years. Context engineering or ontological design. Who's heard of ontological design? Not many. So ontological design is kind of the new economy, I believe, where we're changing perception, we're changing our senses rather than making content. We have a resources problem. We've made a lot of content over the years, and changing the way we sense that content, I believe, is this idea of context engineering. The DMT extended state, I can come out of Imperial College London, where they can potentially keep you in that state permanently. So a very transhumanist approach to psychedelics, and we'll talk a little bit about that as well. And we'll talk about my work in mixed reality and Umwelt hacking. Who's heard of the term Umwelt? Oh, nice. Umwelt, so your sensorial system, every species has a different way of experiencing the world. And yes, so Umwelt hacking, how can we explore the kingdoms of other species to really help us define what it is to be human in this world where we believe we're the top of the food chain? And then some dream hacking technology and some sound archaeoacoustics related work that I'm doing in Egypt. We hire the Great Pyramid every year and do sound experiments. This year, we're going to do light experiments in the King's Chamber. So I think all of us here would understand that reality is programmable. But what does it mean to program reality? That's the basis of Technomancy. We program our realities. And one of the first areas I'm going to talk about is context engineering. So these are various technologies that I've tried out, which you could argue are the sort of the elements around this idea of changing your context. So either changing the way you see, changing the way you hear, giving yourself extra limbs, extra senses, etc. This is the basis. There's whole talks that I've given at EVA previously about context engineering. But to summarize, the one here with the headset gives you 360 vision. So you take a street view camera, squish it into 180-degree visor. Suddenly your brain accepts that as a new reality. And you can start to experience the world as in a 360 realm. So what does it mean to have 360 vision? How does that affect all the existing content that's already out there? How does it change fashion? How does it change sport, etc.? So the work that I've done at Imperial as a participant on the DMT study over the last 6 years has been fascinating in this area around technology. Because what they're trying to do is actually turn this entheogen, this naturally occurring substance which is in your brains as we speak. You produce it endogenously, but also it's in almost all plants, lots of mammals, etc. It's a very mysterious substance. And the idea now is that you can be drip fed this substance and potentially kept inside that experience indefinitely. We've started with expanding the time frame by about 6 times, but this, yeah, it could be 4 hours, 4 days, 4 months. Yeah, Andrew Gallimore here believes you will learn how your brain constructs your subjective world and how psychedelic drugs alter the structure of this world. Now, DMT switches the reality channel by allowing the brain to access information from normally hidden orthogonal dimensions of reality. And finally, you will learn how DMT provides the secret to exiting our universe permanently to complete the cosmic game and to become interdimensional citizens of hyperspace. I think Andrew is insane, but the technology, becoming a technology may be real. I advise you to check out some of his work. So these were the 3 phases at Imperial. I've been very privileged to be part of this study. They're not looking at this psychedelic in terms of how it can benefit depression or PTSD, etc. It's literally to look at what is consciousness. They're trying to explore consciousness through this molecule. And it's been a wild ride. This was me before the first infusion in an fMRI scan. I do not recommend being scanned whilst you're being injected with the most powerful psychedelic on the planet. This was me after that experience. I was the first person to in the world to have the state extended. Yeah, you can talk to me afterwards about what's going on. But what's fascinating is that there seems to be a language that's revealed inside this experience. I see this hieroglyphic, looks like VR. It looks like I'm experiencing some sort of VR language, a light language. It's at the core of my vision. I put a shout out to the community to ask, is anyone else seeing this language that looks like hieroglyphs, ancient and modern at the same time? Then people started sending me examples of what they're seeing in this realm. And Alison Gray there on the bottom right, she came close, but not nearly 3D enough. So yeah, it's this weird language of light. It's the extended state. So this is the ability to continuously feed the drug. Because there's no tolerance, that's why you can potentially turn into the technology. as I mentioned, Andrew Gallimore is quite a transhumanist. So I think he spent too much time in Japan. He actually wants to become an entity, a DMT entity, rather than be an academic.
Fair.
And so he's talking about literally dissolving the body, or literally putting it into a suspended state, a bit like going to Mars. And your waste management, etc., is taken care of. Your fed food. I think it's missing the point. I think we're here to have a human experience, and we're here for a very short time. Don't forget, only 1,000 months. So 83 years is not very long. So let's not hijack the experience. But this is still fascinating. It's fascinating to glimpse into what is potentially there. But if some people do end up doing DMT in a permanent state, then they will be going to have DMT swimming lessons and DMT haircuts and DMT. So because I'm one of the first people, there's only 11 of us that have gone to this realm for an extended stay. The Americans, of course, now are trying to commercialize this work, and they're really going to town with what they want to have in the room when you're one of the participants. So having sketch artists to sketch out what you're seeing, because I would really like to draw this language whilst inside that state, but unfortunately, they don't let you. The protocols are quite strict. You can only draw what you see after the experience. But what's fascinating is that you can change the trick during. You can actually either decrease the amount that you're experiencing in terms of dose, or up it in order to solve different problems, creative problems. So we know that some of these substances have led to scientific breakthroughs. And I really think, much like what's happening in the AI realm, where we're expecting breakthroughs in IQ, I think that we could literally bring back problem or go in with problems. One of the next experiments is for 6 of us to go in at the same time to be inside the extended state. What's fascinating also is this technology, basically magnets. So not even needing any substances, but using these magnetoreceptors to actually turn on and off receptors to be able to achieve such states as well. So it's fascinating stuff. So to counter everything I've already said, I think that there is a real danger this over-romanticizing these states. And you could argue that it's a new form of biochemical VR, where we are getting into another Game of Thrones that is not on the screen but inside our mind. We have to rise above everything being reduced to entertainment, otherwise we will become junkies of altered states that just don't lead us anywhere. So moving on to the third area, this idea of mixed reality technology, I got involved with Mark Farid, who's an artist. He came up with this project, Seeing Eye. How many people have heard of it? A few of us. So Seeing Eye, Mark wanted to, again, another strange character. He wanted to live inside somebody else for a month. So he wanted to wear somebody else's view. So he wouldn't have access to his own eyes or his own ears for a whole month. And basically wanted to dissolve his personality in order to adopt somebody else's. So he's still looking for the surrogate, the person that would walk around for a month wearing a camera rig. I've actually worn it for a day. That was long enough. But it's three cameras making a 270-degree field of view. It's one of those sorts of situations. In fact, the day that I was given the headset to wear to record my day, I was actually doing a presentation in a conference. And was filming everyone the whole day. It didn't actually look like a camera rig. It looked more like I was disabled and I had some sort of problem. So, but I had to tell everyone I'm recording you, but visually and but yeah, it's fascinating that he wants to see the limits and the scope of virtual reality, and he tried to ask me for ethics clearance, Ravensbourne, where I was previously, and I said, no, you're not going to get ethics clearance for this, Mark. At the time, anyway, the VR headsets only give you about an hour. You're only meant to wear them for an hour, and you want to wear them permanently for a month. Yeah, this is what the headset looked like. This is Mark giving it to me in the morning that I got to wear it. Yeah, I just think so. Yeah, let's move on, because I know we don't have much time. But this, I don't know whether this. Yeah, this is fascinating. why are we focused on the human species? Making it just for us? Shouldn't we also be looking at, like here, this artist has a goldfish bowl on wheels. The goldfish is actually moving itself around and has broken out of flatland. So maybe having a psychotic breakdown, or maybe it's having the time of its life. The short-term memory of goldfish may well, things takes off for goldfish, then maybe we would lose that. So yeah, really fascinated by different umwelts of other species. The octopus, for instance, has a brain in each arm. They taste with their tentacles. They're extremely intelligent. And what's fascinating about AI is that we're now able, one of the best news stories about AI is the decoding of other species' languages. We have the Earth Species Project, which is decoding all sorts of different species. We've got all sorts of projects working on plant signaling, sperm whales, dolphins, you name it. We are rapidly decoding what they're communicating. And I would love to ask them what they think of humans. I don't think there's anything that we want to hear, but we need to hear it. I think it's important. So we're making these prosthetics. I know that various people in the room tried some of these out last EVA, where we were trying to either become forest or become octopus, or become mycelium. So I think, the mycelium underneath our feet, arguably a much more intelligent species than ours. Gives immediately when it's in abundance. So we can learn a lot from interactions. I think this is very, very analog. These are analog prosthetic devices. So these are wind whiskers that you apply to give you branches. It's the ability to sense like a tree, etc. So very simple interventions for the jaded humans. And yeah, some of this stuff around making cats. This is perennial problem in philosophy. What's it like to be a bat? This guy actually didn't bother with virtual reality, just went straight and installed echolocation directly into his senses. And through his cheeks, I believe, he's able to sense how far things are away from him from behind. Very useful to have, obviously. Skill. And then moving on to dream hacking. So the God helmet, the Passenger helmet. Has anyone ever tried one? So the Passenger helmet, a very early way of inducing altered states, out of body sense of somebody from behind. And more recently, there's lots of experimentation going on to actually use transcranial stimulation. So a small amount of electricity to the left or the right angular gyrus, whilst in REM, seems to reliably create lucid dream states. And my only problem with that is that our dreams are potentially the only safe space that we have left. But what will probably happen if we could have reliable lucid dreams, what we may see is that people start working in their dreams. Yes. And all those papers that I haven't managed to read during the day, I can imagine scanning before going to sleep and then reading them in the lucid dream. What a terrible idea. Do not do that. Fight against the so we also know that now there's fMRI scans done where people are shown images. I don't know whether you saw the recent work where you're shown an image in an fMRI scan, and the visual cortex can be processed by an AI, and we can literally see what you're looking at. And we can also hear what you're saying in your dreams, because your voice box makes micro movements as you sleep. So there is no safe space.
Capitalism has joined the chat.
Glantamine is an amazing supplement that you take to also induce lucid dreams. So moving on rapidly to sound technology. Nick. So sound is fascinating. This is why I formed the Museum of Consciousness. I think hearables are a major technology that's coming. We've been overdosing on visual technologies, but I think hearables are going to really change things and give us a whole new range of but we know that patients undergoing surgery require less anesthetic when they're being played music. We know that babies, when they're very premature, benefit from prescriptions of sound. Alzheimer's patients can also benefit. You see sound being used to grow plants. Unfortunately for any vegans in the room, sounds are also emitted from plants as they're picked. They don't like it either. So sorry, vegans. Neurosynthesis, I'm fascinated by the ability now of all those poor dead musicians being reanimated to make tracks, so that you feed the whole beat of the over to the machine, and these tracks will be generated. Maybe not so good. And that's what's happening. And then this is how many people have been in the King's Chamber in the Great Pyramid? So a few of you. And so we've been hiring the Great Pyramid for the last few years. It'll be the third year that we've been in there. And what's fascinating about the King's Chamber is it seems to be a ginormous sound experiment. There's resonance galore in the chamber, and you can see those ginormous stacks of granite stacked on top of the King's Chamber. This is the chamber here, and above there are these 4 enormous blocks of granite, and that granite contains rose quartz. 70% of that granite is rose quartz, very specifically put in there for resonance. As you tone, you hum it inside the King's Chamber. It resonates through the whole pyramid. It's a mystery, but we've made the first track for the Museum of Consciousness actually inside the King's Chamber. Tom Middleton made that track, and it's extraordinary. So it's the resonant frequency of the room. It's around 117 hertz, and that resonant frequency is also found in Chichen Itza, in the pyramids in Chichen Itza. How on earth were they sharing this knowledge of this specific frequency? So archaeoacoustics is another huge area of my work. I'm really fascinated by now the ability for technology. You're seeing it with Unreal, with mega scans. You're able to reverse engineer the archaeoacoustics of a space. Once you've 3D LiDAR scanned a structure, to actually really explore these commonalities between these sacred sites. One thing I would also recommend not doing is, if you are making sigils, how many of you make sigils? A sigil is a magical spell that you can make. Do not download an app to do it. You have to do it by hand. There's a warning. If you make an app to do it, then things go horribly wrong. But basically, you come up with a word. So say if your desire is world peace, then you would actually remove certain vowels, and I'm not going to tell you the full technique now, but this machine app will actually generate a sigil. So this is a sigil that you would then either put it on the floor, salt and dance over it. There's various techniques to actually activate your sigils, but be careful. I know Nick Lambert is an expert in this space, but he would also advise you probably not to make them. So to conclude, the community that learns to operate on the basis of a circling gift of dreams will be a community immune to the commodification of desire that so threatens the true potential of the human spirit. I'm really interested in regenerative technology. Sustainability is not enough. How can sustain what? Sustain that they're already broken. How do we regenerate the community? How do we use technologies to go beyond just sustainability? And I'm really interested in encryption. I do a lot of work in volumetrics, a lot of work in sentiment analysis, gathering, whether it's from quantified self technologies to measure effective state. I think that we really need to look at post-quantum encryption, because the kind of encryption we have now is not up to what's needed in terms of avoiding deep fakes from volumetrics, or gathering voice data, etc., and recreating somebody's voice, which is already happening. So a really good resource to look for in terms of a primer, technomancy101.com. You'll get a lot more information than I can give in a small talk. But just to conclude, McLuhan warned about human extension into technology, saying every media extension of man is an amputation. I think there's a lot to be said for it. Poorly designed technology can bring about the arrested development of our human species. And I think that a lot of the technologies have zombified us. So how do we regenerate that? How do we use technology to undo the damage caused by technology? That's the basis of this technomancy. And one of the most interesting surveys I've ever seen was students, actually school students being asked Would you rather lose your smartphone or your sense of smell? They all chose to lose their sense of smell. Unfortunately, they probably don't realize once you lose your sense of smell, your sense of taste.
Yeah.
Reality of shortly after that. So my mantra is don't replace imagination with computer animation. Let's get back to being hyperhuman as opposed to transhuman. And again, this whole talk. Thank you so much.